Before I get started, I have a few questions for you all. So raise your hand if you just have piles and piles of garbage outside of your home or out on your sidewalk. No? Okay, a couple people. My next question is, how many of you consume food that is grown with sewage water? That's a good sign. How many of you have ever entered a restaurant or just a public place in general where there was a huge, thick fog of gray smoke obscuring your vision? Okay, a couple of you. Now you're all probably wondering, why did I ask such bizarre questions? Well, the reason is, all those statements directly apply to the country along the Mediterranean Sea called Lebanon. We are clearly quite fortunate not to have to live with these previously listed problems that only make up a small amount of Lebanon's complications. Yet people, even those outside of Lebanon, have to withstand such conditions every day of their lives. 2 summers ago, I visited Lebanon, the country where my parents grew up, and I witnessed some of these problems. One of the more prominent problems was just the mounds of trash and litter all over the streets. It was basically everywhere, no matter wherever you went. Now, as according to my mom, though, there are garbage trucks that pick up this trash, though they only take the garbage bags and not the litter left over on the streets. So now, even though they do take these garbage bags and put them in landfills, they aren't really landfills because they are only mountains of trash that are set on fire. Clearly, with this fire, as it is rather large, it is quite detrimental to their environment as it releases carcinogens, terrible fumes, causes illnesses and diseases, and attracts mice as well as other rodents to nearby homes. Plus, if we're just going to speak aesthetics for a moment, looking at a mountain of flaming garbage is definitely not the prettiest sight in any city, town, or village. Now, there is a solution to this problem, though, which is to just use the landfills as actual landfills in terms of storing the trash to eventually decompose, rather than causing a larger problem by setting the trash on fire. Yet, this requires large expenses, of which only the government has due to their tax collection and the control of the country's budget. Yet, instead of dividing the money into what goes towards sewer systems, schools, water systems, etc., as we do in the US, they only take the money to fill their own pockets. So now, the solution seems to just assemble a better government. Yet even then, this solution cannot be completed, as the government's voting system is corrupt due to corrupt government officials basically paying voters to elect them rather than voting for officials who actually wish to improve the Lebanese environment. Now, it seems like we must begin with educating the voters into realizing that the money they receive for voting for these unwise government officials is most definitely not worth causing harm and wrecking your precious environment. Now, there are some simpler solutions, though, and that are more convenient, of which other countries and people can do, such as just donating environmentally friendly resources, like biodegradable utensils, and just educating Lebanese kids in the solutions and the problems within their environment and how they can solve them. Also, a major problem in Lebanon, though, is their unsanitary water. Basically, all water sources that are less than 800 meters deep, which in the US customary system is about 2,624.67 feet, are polluted. Now, this pollution didn't always exist in Lebanon. It also seems to have begun when they began to collect water using modernized methods. As with the trash, they used to collect the trash in, as I had mentioned before, with the garbage trucks, they would plow them and everything. And so with the water, they also began to collect them with modernized methods. Now, previously, each household had their own tank where they would collect the sewage water. Then a truck or a company or whatever would come and empty out the tank once it was full. However, it was completely unknown as to what happened with the water once it was in the company's hands. But let's just hope they made some wise choices with it. Anyways, the government later proposed to build sewage pipes for every city, town, and village to collect the sewage water more efficiently as a whole. It seemed like a great idea and everybody was up for it, but there was a problem with this idea. The problem was that the sewage water was then dumped into public water sources. Although this doesn't seem like a problem, it is, as there are no filters to clean out this water. So now public facilities like hospitals can just throw away all their poisonous and hazardous chemicals into these public water sources. They even throw away things like radioactive substances and byproducts of medical procedures, such as blood, skin tissues, and other repulsive materials that don't belong in these public water sources. One can see the consequences of mistreating water in the Roudan River, for example. Can you go back a few slides? Within exactly Lebanon. As you can see, it's a murky green, gray colors. There's trash floating around, no fish, no frogs, or any other form of aquatic life. Another example is the Litani River. This is what it looked like previously, and this is what it looks like now. It's pretty unbelievable. And this river is the largest river in Lebanon, stretching from the north to the south. So you can just imagine how much trash must have come from nearby cities, towns, and villages to cause the largest river in Lebanon to end up looking like this. Can you even imagine that? I know I cannot. Yet, the government did luckily wake up to this situation, after the damage had been done, of course, with a $730 million plan. Made in 2015, it was divided into 4 subcategories. $14 million would go towards solid waste treatment, $2.6 million would go towards industrial pollution, another $2.6 million would go into agricultural pollution, and finally, $712 million would just be dedicated for sewage treatment. Although this plan was made and estimated to take 7 years, nothing has been done yet, and we are in 2018 already. I think you all get a pretty good idea of how the Lebanese government is the type that is just all talk. Now, there is a solution to this disastrous problem with unsanitary water, which is to just install filters where each city, town, and village dumps their water. Yet, this also requires large expenses, of which only the government has. But as I said before, they aren't putting money towards clean water, but instead to fill only their own pockets. Now, I do have some positive news, though, which is that I have seen recycling beginning to appear in Lebanon. Previously, it didn't really exist, but when I frequented a mall that I visited when I visited Lebanon 2 summers ago, I saw they had 3 separate receptacles in the food court. Now, although this isn't the same one, you get the idea that recycling is beginning to appear, especially within the last few years. So at the mall, they had 3 receptacles. One was for paper, one was for plastic, and another was for general waste. Now, even though the thought of establishing the system is positive, the people's reactions were not. Most people just dumped their trash into whatever bin they felt like. The clear sign here is that the Lebanese are just uneducated in the topic of recycling, its benefits, and the negative outcomes of their poor decisions. Would it really kill them to just spend a few extra seconds dividing their trash and disposing of it in the right receptacle? It really wouldn't. Yet their lack of knowledge in the topic of recycling prevents them from doing so. So now the solution doesn't reside within the Lebanese government anymore, but within the people to just realize how a little bit of recycling can truly go a long way, especially in the catastrophic situation of the trash almost devouring their land. Now, we can see that Lebanon has an existent pollution of land, food, and water, but they also have air pollution. So now, I understand that some people smoke and some people don't particularly like it, but there, everyone is smoking everywhere. Here you constantly see signs prohibiting at least indoor smoking, but there, even though so very few signs are seen, no one pays attention to them whatsoever. For example, I went to a Starbucks on my trip 2 summers ago, and they had a no smoking indoors sign, but this is only because it is an American company after all. Yet, if you went to the 2nd floor of the cafe, it was just filled with people smoking. It was absolutely horrendous just seeing this thick gray fog of smoke and just feeling it when you're just trying to have a drink of coffee or a snack or something. Plus, there was a restaurant next door that allowed smoking, so you could see all the smoke drifting from the hookahs and cigarettes over to the Starbucks, which decided to leave its doors open and indirectly allow smoke into their cafe. Clearly, with all this smoking going on, it is no surprise that as of 2015, Lebanon actually was the 3rd highest country with the most cigarettes consumed per capita, with the number being about 3,023 cigarettes. Plus, moments before I mentioned the hookah, which is an extremely popular method of smoking in Lebanon, but smoking at once is equal to 30 cigarettes, and I think we can all agree that's pretty detrimental to both your environment and your health. Yet what's even worse than all this, though, is that adults are even encouraging their kids to smoke. They will literally get excited over their 1-year-old finally smoking a hookah. In fact, you can be as young as 10 years old, or even younger, actually, and you can buy cigarettes from anywhere that sells them. In fact, 42% of males and 32% of females between ages 13 through 15 smoke tobacco products. I think we can all agree it is quite unfortunate for the Lebanese children to follow the poor example set by their adults, by joining in smoking, which is extremely detrimental to their health at a young age when they are developing. Now, my point is that there should at least be a law prohibiting indoor smoking. But wait a second, in fact, there is. Actually, in 2012, Najib Mikati's cabinet approved of Law 174, which was supposed to prohibit indoor smoking. Although this law is in effect, it is most definitely not being enforced. With smoking being almost a cultural tradition in Lebanon and just almost the whole population against the law, it makes it a little bit difficult to enforce. Plus, Lebanon just has a reputation for poor law enforcement mechanisms anyway. The law was also supposed to force companies to begin putting warning signs on tobacco products. As usual, though, most companies didn't follow the law. However, this is an example of a company that did. So you can see on every cigarette box and the advertisement poster in black writing, Al-Tadkhin Yuqtal, which is Arabic for smoking kills you. So even with this very clear and sort of scary message, the number of smokers hasn't decreased, but only increased. Yeah, what doesn't exist in Lebanon, though, is a law that only allows those of 21 years and older to purchase tobacco products. So since it doesn't exist, it wouldn't be a bad idea to introduce it, especially with so many young smokers. So Lebanon has food pollution, water pollution, land pollution, and now air pollution. Like, come on, Lebanon, get it together a little bit. Like, can you please just leave something clean? So, due to the fact that smoking is so normal in Lebanon, they have such a major problem of air pollution and just pollution in general. The issue of pollution is so widespread because all the people just have a poor mentality towards the environment and they don't care. For example, smoking is ruining their environment, their health, the development of their children, yet they don't pay attention to this. For example, a young boy that is 16 years old named Antoine Dumais even said, "I don't care about any legislation or bans," as he lit up a cigarette. I think this gives you a pretty clear view of the mentality of the Lebanese, of the youth, and of how they think of smoking. Thus, with this considered, the pollution of both their environment and minds continues. All in all, these problems may seem rather daunting and quite depressing. Yet if you think about it, the solutions really aren't that difficult. So I mentioned assembling better government officials. However, I then mentioned just educating the Lebanese to make wiser decisions, such as when voting or when throwing away their trash at the mall. So really, these enormous and detrimental problems can just be solved with providing a little bit of knowledge on the various benefits of clean water, clean food, prohibiting indoor smoking, and ridding the land of litter, which are all just essential necessities, I think, if you think about it. Clean water, clean food, doesn't everyone need that? Compared to other countries, the problems of Lebanon aren't that hard to solve. Other countries can get stuck in hopeless situations for years on end with no solutions arising whatsoever. Yet all it takes for Lebanon is to wake up, face reality, and just gain a little more knowledge of which other countries and people, such as ourselves, can assist Lebanon in gaining what it needs to deal with its environmental and issue of mentality. Thank you.